processing organizational grief? Like we talked about anxiety, we talked about some of these other things. Any advice? Pretty much every organization at the moment is processing some form of grief. It could be layoffs, it could be struggling as a business, it could be the things of the world impinging on the people inside the organization. What advice do you have for leaders and for people in organizations in how they can process grief better?
I think it's one of the most important things at the moment. You know, when you make a choice, you grieve the choices you haven't made. But on a small level is one thing, on a big level is something very different. When you live in a period of prolonged uncertainty, as we do right now, you live with tremendous grief. It's the loss of certainty, it's the loss of predictability, it's all of those things. So, one of the main places where I think unprocessed grief is taking place, and this is the word, unprocessed grief. Grief in itself is a fact of life, but to process it, which is something that all cultures have done, we have filled with rituals for how to deal with loss. But companies at this point don't do any of that too often. It's a notice. Well, you don't even get a notice. Your email is cut off and you find out that you are part of the 10,000, 5,200 people who have just been laid off. And you leave people in a state of being ghosted. That is the term of the day. People do it in dating, they understand it very well. But it's the same in the workplace. Suddenly you ghosted. Yesterday it was 200 messages and suddenly nothing. And then we talk about a mental health crisis. You know, and we call it anxiety, but it's grief. And again, the role of the leader is to give some space, some container for people to at least be able to acknowledge it. The first thing you do is you name it. The second thing you do is you frame it. The third thing you do is you contain it. And the fourth thing you do is you normalize it. And then you tell people, you know, that it's not just something you're doing callously because all you're thinking about is the board meeting you just had, and you know that you actually are thinking of them, because what people feel when they're ghosted is that they can be lifted and dropped, you know, swallow and spit. It's just the irrelevance that you begin to feel, you know, plus you are responsible to feed people. It's not like you're just all alone, you know. So, and I think that on a societal level, it's a very harsh experience that people are currently having to experience. And the more there's economic uncertainty, the more this is going to happen. And typically, there is this notion, this constant fear on the part of a lot of HR that if you don't snip it, you know, like make it quick surgical intervention, very short, fast, don't let anything...
No contagion.
Yes, it's going to... really?
We need to create space. We need to allow people to process.
Give people a day, 3 days, 5 days to just say goodbye, to just say where they're going, to realize, you know, a lot of people these days don't know where other people live.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the real addresses. They have their email address, but not their address. You know, if I want to stay in touch with you, it's because everybody communicates through the company Slacks, and so they don't necessarily have their own each other's phone numbers. And the severance that happens, you know, and you don't compensate for the emotional severance by having a severance package.
Yeah.
It feels better to have gotten a decent severance package, but the internal, and then we talk about how people are not loyal and how people are not committed to the companies and how people don't have a sense of responsibility. How could they? How could they? It's being done. It's being modeled on the other side, as in, you know, the numbers are more important, and it's not always so clear, because when I talk with you, you do tell me that it's not just numbers. It's a whole, you know, health of the company, but it demands an explanation. I think that people need to know that it's not just because they can be tossed.
Yeah, and also what I heard from you two there is being conscious of creating unprocessed grief. Like as workplaces, we can do more to create processed grief. Yeah. The grief will be.
The grief is normal. It's the right response it's the adaptive response for the circumstances. Create a structure that allows for it to be expressed, and then let people go. You know, people have loads of stuff for onboarding. Why don't you have stuff for the end?